Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of the Team Daddy Weekly Recap. I am your host, Shapiro the Hero, aka Daddy Dreidels. We are officially one quarter of the way through this 2022 season, and there are a lot of surprises when it comes to the standings thus far. Draft night seems like it was years ago, especially when you look at where everyone thought they would be at this point in the season. I'll take you around the league looking at scores and standings, and we'll set up our next matchup of the week with some big bragging rights behind it. All that and more right after a word from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Johnny Walker Black Label. A smooth, sophisticated scotch for the rowdiest crowd around, Johnny Walker Black is the perfect choice to toast to victory or to drown your sorrows after a crushing defeat. Let's kick off our Week 4 recap with our matchup of the week. In this week's matchup of the week, we had undefeated Brett taking on winless Kyle. And just as everybody predicted, Kyle pulled off the upset, beating Brett 215.15 to 143.2. Kyle set himself up for success early this week as Captain Tyreek Hill led the way with 46.35 points. Kyle also got 34.4 points from T. Higgins on Thursday night, and then 48 from Jared Goff on Sunday. He capped it all off with 22 points from the 49ers defense on Monday night to claim the top scoring team this week. For Brett, Josh Jacobs led the way with 39.5 points, and he also got 33.85 points from Russell Wilson. However, the rest of Brett's team knew it was time for him to take an L, and they all promptly shit the bed. With no trash talking to be had this week, Brett will lick his wounds and get ready for a Week 5 matchup against George, while Kyle will face his brother in Week 5's matchup of the week. As for the Elder Swans, Week 4 saw Sensei Yum Yum get back into the win column, following a 157.25 to 127.8 win over Jed. Captain Jamal Williams led the way for Swans with 49.35 points, and he also got 20-point performances from his keepers, Josh Allen and CeeDee Lamb. For Jed, Nick Chubb and Travis Kelce led the way, but it was not enough as Jed drops his second game in a row. Team Bang Bang Skeet Skeet will look to get back on track next week against PJ, while Swans will look to avenge last year's championship loss to Kyle. And with Brett's loss this week, I am proud to announce that I am the only unbeaten team left. Not quite sure how that happened, but I did move to 4-0 on the season after defeating PJ 212.3 to 130.5. I have Captain TJ Hawkinson to thank for this week's victory, as he led all players in Week 4 with 67.35 points. My big guns also came to play, as I got 37.25 from Tom Brady, 33.9 points from Austin Eckler, and 25.8 from Christian McCaffrey. PJ's leading scorer this week was Captain Leonard Fournette with 27.6 points, and he also got 24.5 from Devontae Adams. In addition, PJ won the deferred jackpot for having the highest scoring kicker, taking home $30 thanks to Daniel Carlson's 13 points. After last season's debacle, however, PJ may be repeating his basement performance as he is now 1-3. He will try to get some redemption next week against Jed, while I look to stay unbeaten against the other Riotica, Josh. Speaking of Josh, I do have to call you out for that team name, buddy. I know you don't mean anything by it, but maybe let's think about making a change there. Just saying. Josh was actually the beneficiary of a late score update as he defeated Big John 197.8 to 134.8. It was Miles Sanders, Justin Jefferson, and Captain Alan Lazard leading the way for Josh as the three combined for over 100 points. Joe Burrow led the way for Big John with 30.95 points, but the big story was Javonte Williams, who will be out for the remainder of the season with a torn ACL. With Big John falling to 1-3 after this loss, he may find himself back in the toilet bowl again. Josh, on the other hand, improves to 3-1 and will face me in Week 5, while Big John will take on Armenti. Speaking of Armenti, he is back to 500 this week after defeating Cheese 156.5 to 146.3. Armenti was led by his keeper tandem of wide receivers as Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel combined for close to 64 points. Cheese's keeper pair of Patrick Mahomes and Derrick Henry also put up big numbers, but it was Mike Evans leading the way with 35.3 points. Nonetheless, Cheese falls to 1-3 after this loss, but be warned folks, he is still proposing awful trades. Armenti, on the other hand, improves to 2-2 and will take on Big John in Week 5, while Cheese will face off against Zach. And in our final matchup of the week, Zach became the latest victim of a very surprising powerhouse, George. Brother Chuyu is now 3-1 after taking down Trooper Hoff 142.45 to 117.5. Even with Lamar Jackson failing to break 30 points for the first time all season, Rashad Penny picked up the slack for George, leading the way with 37.7 points. For Zach, it was Hollywood Brown leading his team in scoring with 20.8 points, but unfortunately, Alvin Kamara was a late scratch, and as team captain, he left a hole that Zach could just not get out of. Zach is now 1-3 and will face Cheese in Week 5, while George has now won 3 in a row and will look to make it 4 next week against Brett. Let's take a look at the standings after the first quarter of the season. I currently sit atop the leaderboard at 4-0, with Josh, George, and Brett all right behind me at 3-1. At 2-2, Jed, Swans, and Armenti round out our playoff teams if the season were to start today. After that, we have our one-win squads, led by Big John, and followed by PJ, Zach, Kyle, and Cheese. Looking ahead to Week 5, we have some key games coming up, with Brett and George facing off in a matchup of surprise 3-1 teams who will continue their storybook season. Can I remain undefeated against Josh and his powerhouse squad? And in our matchup of the week, which Spawnsboro will claim bragging rights? All these questions and more will be answered in just 7 short days. Until next time, thank you as always for watching. This has been your Team Daddy Weekly Recap. I am Daddy Dreidels, and I will see you next time. L'chaim, motherfuckers!